Okay, this is part 2 from where we left off last night, and I had talked about traumas that I had been through, and one of the suggestions that I got was to go through and talk about the traumas that I have been through throughout my life. And I made a list. I jotted down things that I had talked about in part 1, so I try not to go and repeat, even though some of them might overlap. I had talked about things more recent than farther away and farther in my past, but I'll try to get to that in this video. So this is part 2. I talked about my recent divorce, my arrests, my children, and their phone calls that they made for me. I like that. that they made to me. The molestation, my mother and my father and my sister, my pregnancy, all the therapists that I have seen. That's absurd. The adoption and his father dying in the car crash after he had been drinking. My adoptive son's parents and how they're assholes. And all the times that I've gone to jail, which are countless, but like I always say, none of them were felonies. They're all misdemeanors, but equally, damn it, my eye can't itch or my nose can't itch when I'm, not recording, right? And some of the violence that was just really petty. So this one, I want to name Breaking the Silence: The Untold Stories of Emotional Pain. And that's sort of, this is not untold. I'm telling it. So I guess where I should leave off, I'm not sure if I guess I can go back to the beginning. I know I talked about things when I was really young that happened to me when I was 9, and I was molested. Before that, when my sister, she hated me from the day I came home from the hospital, and everybody knew it. She hated me forever, and she didn't keep that a secret. She tried. She would make sure that I wouldn't tell the things that she would do to me. Hold a knife to me and don't tell mom and dad. Do this, do that, just strange things that were abusive. I'd consider it abusive. So when I didn't graduate high school because I just had no interest in school, my mom would always say I would go there just for the socialization, which is true. So then I'd get a whole bunch of detention, and gee, give me 3 days off. I appreciate that. Then they got wise to it and started to give me in-school suspension, and that sucked. You just sat in a hallway and just sat there all day. So, and then I'd have to walk home, which was a lengthy walk. So eventually, summer would come and we'd party, and I was 16 when I met my first husband, and we met out on a farm. A friend of ours, his dad had a farm, and we'd party like hell all night, every night, and we just had a good time. And then my dad and I had our apartment, and he wasn't my husband yet. He was we weren't engaged or anything. We were just going together. My leg itches. We were just going together and dating and whatever. But my dad ended up living in his truck out in the parking lot because my boyfriend kicked him out. And my dad ended up going to jail for 3 months for welfare fraud, because he was collecting money and getting food stamps, and my boyfriend was giving him money to live there. So he ended up going to jail because he got busted for it. And then when he got out, my boyfriend wouldn't let him live back with us. He had to go live out in his truck. And it was such bullshit. That wasn't even his apartment to start with. That was our apartment. But I'm 16. Before that, or I don't remember if it was before that or when exactly, and I have the flyers. We had a home phone, and the farm we'd stay at had a phone out in the barn. So every day I would try to call my dad and let him know I was okay, but he wouldn't answer. So for a couple of days I was not in touch with my dad. So he called me in as missing. So I was missing once. Do I think being missing is funny? I do in this situation, because I wasn't missing. He was missing my calls. And, you got the police involved. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And I have the flyer, and I was just like, holy shit, I was actually missing. So things just progressed where he was very abusive. He would twist my arms and twist my legs. He was, and people say you can't be, but he was addicted to marijuana. If he didn't have his weed, he was violent and just nasty and mean. He would twist my arms and twist my legs and threaten to break them, but he would never leave marks, because then there was no proof that he hurt me. So one time before he had left for work, I think he worked third shift, maybe he was on second, no, it was third. We were just sitting in the apartment. We had moved to an apartment across the hall. I can't remember why. Maybe because it was 1 bedroom. That's what I believe. So it was cheaper. And, he'd threaten me if I didn't get a job. And once I got a job, then he'd get jealous. And just a whole lot of drama. Yeah, I still fidget. I was working at a gas station, and he told me, if you don't come up with this money by this and this time, I'm kicking your ass out. And I'm like, well, where am I going to go? And he didn't care. So I ended up forging 2 money orders, and it was like $100. I mean, back then, it was petty. But I ended up forging those and taking those and getting him his money. And I got busted for it, and I don't even remember what happened, really nothing. But then when I quit, I went to go get my last paycheck, and the manager, she's like, well, you stole this money, you have to pay it back before I give you your paycheck, or you have to cash your paycheck here and give me the money that you stole. And I'm like, I didn't steal any money. And she's like, yes, you did. I have it on here, this and that. Lo and behold, come to find out that it was the other manager that had been stealing money the entire time. And it was true. Yes, I did take the money orders, but I did not steal the money. So I think she did end up getting busted. She got, all famous in the newspapers and shit. It was just small town petty shit. But I want to turn my heater on because I'm a little bit chilly. Our house is 1888, and it gets, He's got plastic on the windows, but the wind still finds me. So anyway, I did end up getting him his money that he demanded. I ended up getting in trouble for it. And so whatever happened, happened. I don't even recall because it just was really nothing compared to what was to transpire more. Him with, threatening to break my arms and legs. And, like I said, he never would leave a mark. I always say he was smart that way, and I guess that's kind of sarcasm. I'm looking at my calendar, not my calendar, shit, I don't want that. I want my clock, because I forgot to set my timer. I'm just going to go ahead and set it for 30 minutes again. So anyway, yeah, there was abuse, and one night he was getting ready to go to work, and restaurants had these square glass ashtrays, and we had one, and he threw it at me. I'm a very small person. I mean, I was maybe, back then, maybe 95 pounds, 5'6". I've shrunk since then, because I was only 16, 17, and I got this pillow, and I'm trying to get my butt comfortable on the pillow. But anyway, I'm getting there, okay? So he, I don't know, I'm sure I said something to piss him off. Or not. We just, we're always in a spat. We always had issues. And I only stayed with him because I really had no place else to go. And I was young and naive. I mean, he would kick me out all the time. And I'd have to go sleep on the apartment stairs, in the stairway. And my sister lived upstairs. And her husband had a brand new baby. So I couldn't stay with them. So I had to sleep there, or I slept in the back of or I slept in my sister's car. I ended up going and staying at a friend's house, and staying there, and I slept in the basement, but she slept on there too. We had a lot of fun, but he didn't know where I was. I kind of tried to hide, and he did find me, and I went back to the apartment, and he had 2 shotguns there, and he said if I left him again, he would shoot himself. Should have left. But when they put that kind of guilt on you, and you're that young and naive, you don't want that. You don't want to be the one responsible for that. So anyway, all that yada yada yada. I shouldn't say that. It's just filler. It's garbage. But what I meant was just, okay, so things continued. And I must have been about 20, or just about to turn. I was just about to turn 20. And it's the beginning of the year. And for a while, his knees hurt him really bad. And it's like, well, it's just because you drink so much Mountain Dew. It's like, we don't know why his knees hurt him all the time. And just hurt him so bad. And I can't remember if he went to eventually he did go to the doctor. And he went to the doctor, and he had a piece of shit truck that I actually took my driver's test in. But yeah, it was a piece of shit truck, but it got us where we needed to go. And we went to the clinic, and they ran all these tests and this blood work, and all of a sudden they're like, you have to come back to the clinic now. You have to get back here. And we're like, okay, fine, we'll come back to the clinic. So we went back to the clinic, and we talked to the doctor. And the doctor's like, he has leukemia. And it's like, okay. You gotta get down to the hospital, right away. He needs to start, treatment, and they gotta get him prepped, and they do all this shit. and they're like, you got to get to the hospital. Well, we weren't going to attempt to take the truck down there because it was quite a ways. So we had to call around, and his grandfather finally decided to take us. And we sat there and screwed around, calling people and gathering belongings and, you know, just messing around and doing shit. We didn't think it was a big deal. So when we got down there, they're like, where the hell have you been? And it's like, excuse me? We were told at like noon that we had to get down to the hospital. And we didn't get down there till like 6. It was many hours later. And they're like, you were supposed to get down here like right away, not screw around. And we're like, well, they didn't tell us that it was urgent. So, you know, we got them all set up and whatever. And it was a really rare form of cancer, of leukemia. And he started, you know, treatments, chemo and radiation, and it was either like 3 days before or 3 days after. Gosh, 3 days before I found out I was pregnant. And we were happy about it, I guess. I was. And then this all happened, so I'm pregnant and all this stress. And we weren't married yet. So January 29th is my birthday. So the end of January, we ended up getting married down in the hospital because we needed to secure me and my baby's future in case something happened to him. So it was the beginning of January, I mean like the 3rd, that we ended up going down to the hospital. Got married around the 30th, 31st, something like that. And he went through a lot of treatment, and then he had a black spot on his lung, and they couldn't do surgery because he was too weak. And we had to go into when we go into his room, we have to wear, you know, a cap and gown and shoes, and so he wouldn't get any germs. And I mean, it was a lot of shit. And so then I decided, well, his dad had gotten me a car, and I was able to drive down there. I bet you it was probably at least 2 hours. And I'd go down there like every day because I couldn't stay down there. There was no place for me to stay. So eventually they got me, I couldn't stay at the Ronald McDonald House because that's for parents of children. And they really couldn't find me a place to stay, but then they decided to let me stay in where the nursing students, all these girls, it was so funny. And it was an old building and just really crap. But I shouldn't complain. I didn't have to drive this much, you know. So, my lips are chapped. I think I had that once before. But anyway, so I have ADD, so I apologize. I have a hard time staying on track. And this was a really long time ago. So I ended up going down there like almost every day because there was no place for me to stay until they found the nursing, where the nurses would stay, the boarding house or whatever, I think is what it was called. They ended up hitting me, you know, getting me a room there, and I was able to stay there for a little while. It was just temporary, and it sucked. So anyway, you know, January, February, March, it got to the point where it was, yeah, you know, he's gonna pull through. No, I'm not so sure. We don't know. He's in pretty rough shape. Yeah, he should make it. It was just bouncing back and forth, and it's kind of like, fuck with your emotions. Because after, let me back up 2 seconds. After he hit me with the ashtray, I mean, I was so skinny that this little square ashtray managed to hit both of my legs, both of my shins, and left marks. So I called the police and I said, I need police here, and please bring your cameras. Or camera. I didn't want big media to do. But bring your camera. Because I wanted them to document the evidence that I had injuries. So after that, they went and arrested him at work. Which is great for me because I didn't have to listen to him cussing and swearing and threatening me. So yeah, he went to jail over his birthday. And he got out. He took anger management classes. And he didn't hit me at all after. And we got engaged. So that was that end of it. So anyway, back to what I was talking about, the cancer. He got bone marrow from his sister, and that didn't work. A lot of chemo, a lot of radiation, and that didn't work. And they finally just said he has 2 or 3 days. And I'm like, okay, well then let's bring him home so he can die at home. So we ended up bringing him home, and me being pregnant, I'm like, oh, god damn. Me being pregnant, I'm just like, well, we had a waterbed, and I'm like, well, every time he moves to get up or whatever, I'll wake up. And I didn't. And he was like down to 95 pounds. And he would get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and he'd fall, and his mom, who was non-existent, came out of the woodwork, and she was a nurse at one point, and there's a lot of backstory with her. I don't even go there. So she kind of kicked me to the curb and said I was a nurse, and at the time she was abusing prescription medications, and she ended up kind of moving in and sleeping on her couch. It's great. I'm gonna skip a lot of the petty bullshit that their family put me through. Because like when he died, any appliances, any utilities that were in his name, they took out and put in his sister's name. So I didn't have a phone, I didn't have heat, I didn't have water, I didn't have anything. So I finally called, and they're like, well, nobody said he was married. And it's just like, well, he is. So anyway, we decided to bring him home, and they said, you know, he'd only have a couple of days. And he ended up living a month in like 3 days. Because at the very end, we ended up having to have him hospitalized so they could give him stronger medication for pain. So I know that I was up there, of course, a lot, and because once he went through his anger management classes, he never hit me again. So things were good, or decent, they're alright. And so we had him go in the hospital. His aunt was there, and she's like, I don't want to be here if he dies. I don't want to be the one who's here when he dies. And I'm just like, you know, I gotta go home. I gotta take a shower. I gotta change my clothes, things like that. And while I was gone, he died while she was there. So, you know, we had the funeral, everything to do. And his sister was pregnant at the same time as me. So we kind of bonded because we had babies the same age. They were like 6 days apart. And she was just an opportunist. You know, we'd have a fundraiser, and she would take all the money and she'd spend it, and she said she'd spend it on his behalf. Well, what is there to spend on his behalf? There wasn't anything. So she did all that. So anyway, to move on, so I had that abuse that I went through for many years, a lot of emotional abuse, physical abuse, things like that, abuse from his family. But there were times that, I lived with my mom. That's abuse right there. That's punishment. So anyway, no, her and I got along at the time. I ended up having my son, and things were pretty good. I was a single mom. My mom had her full-time job, so she couldn't take care of him during the night, and he was colicky, like, oh my god, bad. So I was a single mom taking care of a child that wouldn't shut up. I tried everything, but anyway, he was a nasty child until he was about 6. When he'd hit me, he'd kick me, he'd throw things at me. He probably got that from his dad. And I ended up dating a guy for 15 months, and he was not physically abusive, but emotionally, psychologically. And he would spank my son on purpose just to see him cry. If that ain't fucked up, I don't know what it is. But we lived quite a bit distance apart. He didn't have a driver's license because he got a DUI. So, he'd expect me to take him at 3 in the morning, way far away, to his friend's house to go fishing. I don't think I did, because it was starting to brighten up. And we ended up moving into a bigger apartment. And I know it's all really boring, I'm sorry. I'm getting there. So, I ended up getting a part-time job and putting my son in daycare. It was just 4 hours a day. My mom worked there. I had friends that worked there. My mom, that's where she'd worked for 22 years, so they all knew me really well. And I worked there for a while, but where I took my son to daycare, it was always like dark in there, and there's something wrong with that picture. There's something wrong. So I didn't like it. So I quit, and I pulled him out. And before that, my boyfriend at the time says, yeah, you're gonna go get this job and you're gonna meet somebody else, you're gonna meet somebody better than me, and wah wah, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I did. Ended up meeting my second husband, and he was a great guy, fantastic. I went from like terribly abused to princess. I went up in the world, and he accepted my son really well, and we all got along really well, and ended up moving. And he went to school, and life was pretty good. We lived out on a farm. And my damn thing, it's gonna be dark again because my damn screensaver, I forget. I should turn the damn thing off, but I forget. I worry more about the microphone. Technology. Sorry. So anyway, we ended up living above his uncle, and then we ended up buying a place together and getting married. I ended up having a full-term stillborn child, a boy, when I saw the ultrasound, because I said I hadn't felt him kick in a while, and they'd have me go do stress tests, and I still haven't felt him, and they did an ultrasound, and I saw it, and I'm good at reading ultrasounds. I can tell if it's a girl or a boy. I watched David's heart ultrasound, and I could, I asked a lot of questions about that. So now I know how to read a heart ultrasound. No, not really. But, oh yeah. So I saw the ultrasound, and it looked like cauliflower. And I'm like, why isn't his heart beating? You should see, you should hear a heartbeat. And then, the technician is like, just wait, I'll be right back. And she said, you can get cleaned up. So I did that, and then she says, you can go sit over here in the hallway, and I did that. And I knew. And I'm like, just give me a C-section. I don't want to give birth to a dead baby. But I had to. So I gave birth to him, and everybody insisted that I hold him. I don't want to hold him. The thing that's fucked up about that is a few weeks before that, I went into labor, and thanks to my ex-husband holding me down, they gave me drugs to stop my labor. And to me, that was nature's way of saying, hello, he's ready. You have to have him now. And I'm like, I don't want the drugs. Just let me, let things do what it's supposed to, And he helped hold me down to give me these drugs to stop my labor. And he probably would have lived if they would have not given me the drugs, because it wasn't that long. And they're like, we just want to wait until this many weeks. We just want to wait. Shit, babies live at 6 weeks. Well, maybe a little longer, 18 weeks gestation. But I mean, I was like right there, 34 weeks I think I was. I didn't have, he would have made it, chances are. So anyway, yeah, they insisted that I give birth to this dead baby. And they all insisted that I hold him. I don't want to hold him. He's dead. You expect a baby that you give birth to wiggle and cry and, move around. He wasn't. I don't want him. I don't want anything to do with him. And I think he may have, it was so traumatic that I can't remember if I held him or not. I know I didn't hold the first one that I gave up for adoption. I refused to hold him. But this one, I think I held for like 2 minutes, and I'm like, I don't want to hold him anymore. He was purple, and he was not moving and not crying. He was lifeless. That's not a baby to me. That's just tragic. So, we ended up burying him on top of my husband at the time, on top of his mom in their cemetery where they go to church, Catholic, no thanks. But we ended up burying him there. And then exactly a year and a week later, we ended up having our next son, my 27-year-old prick. Doctor says wait 3 months to get pregnant again, or try again. So we did, and I got pregnant right away. And I usually could only get pregnant every 5 years. It was the weirdest thing. And that baby was an off year. So it was strange. So yeah, I ended up having the next one. And he was a good baby. He was alright. He just turned into an asshole later on. That's what it is. Call a spade a spade, So I ended up, his dad and I didn't really, we got along. It was just that we were so different. I was younger. I wanted to party because I spent all of my teenage years being a mom. Then I wanted to party, and I always made sure that my 2 boys were taken care of, and I would party. And I wasn't irresponsible. I just wanted to party. So I ended up getting separated. I ended up seeing other people, blah blah. And then I ended up meeting my last husband online because the judge made my husband and I stay living together because neither one of us could afford to live separate. So he made us stay living together. And it's like, it's a little awkward. But he worked 3rd shift, so when he was working, I was sleeping, and vice versa. So it worked out fine. And so I met this guy online, and he's from California, which was on the other side of the country. And I ended up driving 2,500 miles to meet him. And, we got along really good and all this stuff. there's a lot of fluff in between what I'm talking about. It's like just filler, and I don't need to do that. So anyway, he ended up moving here, and him and my boys got an apartment together, and things were good. We ended up, a month after we moved here, I think it was, we ended up moving to a 20-acre farm, and I got, for the boys, I got kittens, I got bunnies, I got, you know, all this fun stuff for them. It's 20 acres. You know, it was great out there. I loved it. And unfortunately, I am going to have to wait for I'll cut this one out, and then I will start part 3. So I'll be back in a bit.